Hello everyone. I hope you're staying safe and doing well. My name is Anushka Raghav and I'm currently an undergraduate student of Economics and Psychology from the University of Delhi. The topic for this talk is something I have been wanting to discuss for a very long time, and I would like to extend my heartiest gratitude to UNESCO New Delhi and 81 Foundation for giving me this platform to speak up where it matters. With that being said, I would like to open up my talk by focusing on what exactly do I mean when I say inclusive economic growth. As per OECD, inclusive growth is economic growth that is distributed fairly across society and creates opportunities for all. It means having access to essential resources in health and education by the poor. It includes providing equality in opportunity and empowering people through education as well as skill development. It also encompasses a growth process that is environmental friendly, aims for good governance, and helps in creation of a gender-sensitive society. While we contribute towards creating a robust, progressive economy, it is imperative to ensure that we make efforts to significantly reduce the inequitable distribution of economic resources amongst various communities coexisting in our society. The perceived tension between inclusion and growth and the false belief that they should be addressed separately has hampered efforts to pursue and achieve inclusive growth. Inclusive growth is about embedding equity into the development process, which demands strong shifts in resources and capabilities, stakeholder and organizational incentives, and trust across social networks. Because at the end of the day, the gains from progress and development should be accessible to all in order to fully develop as a community and as an economy. Now, if we talk about India's current scenario, especially while keeping in mind the recent second wave of COVID in April 2021, it can be said that it was a grave crisis most of us were unprepared for. However, the magnitude of this crisis was not limited to just the healthcare system in our country. The unraveling of the second wave of COVID has also exposed many vulnerabilities and inconsistencies that run in our economy, and more than that, how we as a society take part in the economy. In India, COVID-19 has exposed comorbidities in our economy and has further opened up traditional fault lines with economically underprivileged communities bearing the brunt of the costs. To begin with, the pandemic and the subsequent lockdowns in 2020 resulted in more than 130 million daily wagers being rendered jobless and homeless as per the Center for Monitoring Indian Economy. Our GDP index rate had taken a fall and our ever-growing economy faced a major challenge of surviving a global health crisis while keeping our national economy from crashing. Moreover, there was a severe lack of even the most basic essential economic resources such as food and shelter, along with an increased insecurity amongst various groups in our society. Although in March 2021, the state of the economy had almost reached pre-COVID levels, the sudden and sharp rise of COVID cases in April resulted in a huge economic shock, followed by a drop in consumer demand and also the supply of healthcare and educational services. Unemployment levels were on a rise yet again, and the economic growth was severely hampered once again. Another major issue that came into light during this period is the issue of economic inclusion and how this period highlighted the ever-growing divide between the economically privileged and underprivileged. Here, I would like you to reminiscence about the times we were living in when the second wave of COVID had struck in India. Hospitals were overwhelmed with hundreds and thousands of patients, gasping for air and barely able to gather essential medical resources. Helplines were overwhelmed with calls and cries of people who had been struck by the virus. Funeral grounds were overwhelmed with patients of COVID who unfortunately couldn't be saved. Everywhere there were cries of help that sadly couldn't be resolved. There was desperation among the citizens to save one's lives or of their loved ones. As the hospital beds, oxygen cylinders, and stock of medicines depleted, the fears and tensions of the people grew. With nowhere to go and nobody to seek help from, the patients of COVID and their loved ones were put in a state of frustration, hopelessness, and uncertainty. During these times, several economic malpractices came into being, such as black marketing of medical supplies and the widespread corruption. The prices of injections, oxygen cylinders, and hospital services skyrocketed, pushing people to spend lakhs of rupees to get basic treatment for COVID-19. Even then, people lost their lives and of those they loved. This resulted in many people being pushed into an economically and financially vulnerable state. And of course, the divide between the haves and the have-nots grew deeper as the prices of medical resources had shot up. For the vaccines as well, if you see today, there still remains many groups and communities who either don't have the access or they don't have the information about where they can get vaccinated from. As the times grew darker and situations became grimmer, the distrust between us citizens and the state grew as well. We no longer had faith in the leaders who are accountable to us. Hence, we citizens had to come together in solidarity and work towards fighting the crisis. From creating lists of available resources to amplifying contact numbers of those who can provide some sort of help, we witnessed completely different times where the citizens gave each other the support they needed from their leaders. Black markets and bribing our way out were the only options left. Yet, due to the ever-rising prices and the quick depletion of resources being sold either in black or in the regular market, only a few could benefit from this. Unfortunately, there were hundreds of thousands of those who did not just die of a deadly virus, but also, due to the lack of economic resources, need to attain basic health care. And to no surprise, the poorest had to yet again bear the brunt of the crisis. Now let's connect this with the very idea of economic inclusivity we began with. Now here I would like to take an opportunity and ask you all a few questions to ponder upon. Number 1. For how long will the socio-economically disadvantaged, or as we call them, the have-nots, have to bear the brunt of every single crisis that comes upon us? Number 2, are we as an economic community failing to create an equitable distribution of resources amongst all groups? Or can we say that we are towards a path of slow, painful but consistent growth and inclusivity? And lastly, but the most important question that I would like to raise through this talk, are we holding our leaders and change makers accountable? And are we pushing them towards bringing about a greater inclusive growth in the socio-economic community? Currently, we're in a place where we are recovering from the harrowing situations we dealt with during the second wave of COVID. This is the time for us to, number 1, especially equip the economically disadvantaged groups with resources for greater inclusivity. And by here, I mean skill development, financial literacy and resources, technological tools, as well as stable minimum wages and source of income. There can be more as well, but here are just a few examples. And secondly, hold this is a perfect time for us to hold more societal conversations about bridging the mistrust between the citizens and the leaders above us, our cultural perception towards the future of our economy, and ways we can ensure security to the groups more vulnerable to economic crises like such as compared to the rest. I'm sure many of you who are listening to this are those who aspire to bring about a better change in the world. I too am someone who wishes to contribute towards a better future in any way I can. Hence, I sincerely urge my fellow change makers and leaders to prioritize ways to promote greater economic inclusion and to make efforts to commit to an inclusive development process. Too often, economic development planning happens to communities rather than with communities. In other words, we do not give sufficient importance to the very communities we seek to work for. To achieve an economy with benefits that are shared across, leaders and the citizens alike must directly engage diverse voices and give decision-making power to the communities they seek to empower. Our work for economic inclusion begins at a very ground level through interacting with some of the least privileged economic groups in our society and bringing about developmental infrastructures that align with their needs and requirements as well. Surely, aligning on a bold and measurable aspiration that is anchored in facts and assets of the community is critical in achieving success. Aligning public, private, and social sector leaders and communities on a shared vision of the future provides a North Star by which they can navigate measurable goals, interventions, as well as important investments. Hence, it is important to stay rooted to our purpose as well as to put sincere efforts towards achieving it. With that being said, I would like to close my talk by once again reiterating that economic and developmental progress will remain futile unless we put in our sincerest efforts into ensuring the equitable distribution of its benefits. Thank you very much.